Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of DMRC, Development Management Review Committee. As usual, this will be run under the Council's hybrid protocol, so some members are in the chamber, some officers are remote. If you wish to speak, if you're remote, if you can use the electronic hand up. If you're in the chamber, just use your physical hand. We'll just get on with the business now. Item 1, apologies or substitutes?
No apologies, Convener.
Thank you. I'll apologise for my throat, so I'll try and get through this best I can. Declarations of interest or statements of transparency. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. Item 6, I would have to declare a transparency on being a councillor. You get to know people in your area, and I know of the owners of the farm, and that's basically it. They're no relatives or friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Okay, we'll move on to the minute of the previous meeting, which was the 4th of September. That was the meeting that dealt with the 3 flood-related issues. If you remember, are the minutes correct? Okay, I think we're accepting those as correct. Thank you. We'll move on to the first item on the agenda, which is 4 Market Street at Brechin, and I'll hand over to our planning advisor, Ms. Katie Mackay.
Good afternoon, members. Just let me share. Can someone confirm if we can see that okay? Brilliant. Good afternoon. I am Katie Mackay of the Development Plan team, present today as Independent Planning Advisor to the committee. I can confirm I undertook an initial site visit on the 13th of September 2023. I have had no previous involvement in the application, and I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant or any interested party. The committee is asked to consider an application for a review of the refusal of a change of use to form a flatted dwelling at 4 Market Street, Brechin. The proposal is within an area outlined in red shown on the map, located in Market Street within the defined town centre boundary. It seeks planning permission for the change of use and alterations of retail premises to form a flatted dwelling. The existing retail unit is located on the ground and basement floors of a Category B listed 3-storey building. Within the same building is another retail unit with flatted dwellings in the upper floors. An established hot food takeaway sits to the left of the proposed development, with an established retail unit to the right, with the frontage facing onto Swan Street. This slide shows the existing basement and ground floor plans and existing elevations.
Ms. Mackay, can I just let you know that we're still seeing the initial slide, so so we're still looking at the intro slide.
Give me a second. Would you like me to go back over and just point out where the proposed development is in terms of the location plan?
Yeah, yes, please. I mean, I think we're now looking at the street plan with the houses outlined and a red round, I think, the site in question. So that's the second slide, is it?
Yes.
Okay, that's where we are now.
So that's the proposal in the area outlined in red. It's located in Market Street within the defined town centre boundary. An application seeks planning permission for the change of use and alterations of retail premises to form a flatted dwelling. The existing retail unit is located on the ground floor and the basement floor of a Category B listed 3-storey building Within the same building is another retail unit with flatted dwellings in the upper floors.
Can I just stop you there, I think, because Councillor Brace has got a question. I think he's putting his hand up.
Yes. Do we have a slide that shows outlined the defined town centre?
I don't have it here just now, but I can get that for you.
It's okay, thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Ms Mackay.
Okay, this slide shows the location plan submitted by the applicant. An established hot food takeaway sits to the left of the proposed development, with an established retail unit to the right, with the frontage facing onto Swan Street. Apologies, I seem to be having some technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. So this slide shows the existing basement and ground floor plans and the existing elevations. And this slide shows the proposed floor plans with the proposed works to the existing shop and storeroom on the ground floor to create a living room, kitchen and bedroom with no amendments at basement level. The existing windows and door openings are proposed to be retained with new doors and windows fitted. This photograph shows the proposed development situated at the unit shown with the shop sign which says Dali Lulu's. The existing fast food takeaway is shown to the left of the proposed development, with the side elevation of an existing retail unit shown to the right of the proposed development. It also shows the upper floors of the buildings facing Market Street. The photograph on the left shows the rear of the property and is courtesy of the agent's submission. The photograph on the left shows the rear of the upper floors of the wider building to include the extraction system used by the existing hot food takeaway. Just in case members are not aware of the agent of change principle, which the case officer makes reference to in the report of handling, it's firmly embedded in Scottish planning policy, and it clearly places the responsibility of mitigating any detrimental impact of noise on neighbours with those carrying out the new development or operations. So in plain terms, the developer is expected to demonstrate that they have undertaken measures to ensure residents will not be impacted by neighbouring use. Another point to mention, during the site visit undertaken, the public house referred to in the applicant's statement, which was formerly vacant, is now fully operational. To conclude, the case officer report, notice of review, grounds of appeal and other information are detailed in the papers in front of members. Back to you, Convener.
Thanks, Ms Mackay. Any questions for our planning advisor? I'm not seeing any questions. Do we have enough information now to determine this particular case? Councillor Brace.
I feel I do. Thank you.
Nodding of heads from Councillor Nicholl. Are the other members happy that they've got enough information? Okay, thank you. So, in the usual fashion, we'll go round the table and see what people's views are. I guess you're the local member here, Councillor Nicholl, so we'll give you the first chance to have your say.
Right, this prospects of it, looking onto the main street in Brechin, it's a bit of a myth. It's actually onto Market Street, which is a lesser street. I know it's not good policy to have offices, shops, offices, etc., made into residential property, but this does comply with NFP 4 Policy 9, like a brownfield site, an empty building. It is complying with Policy 15, local shops within 20 metres. And forbye that, there's 10 shops nearby empty. So what do we do with these properties? These properties will probably be left for evermore empty. And I think it's a property we've got to think about redeveloping. I'd be in favour of this plan.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to one of our remote members, Councillor Durno. Do you want to give us your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's NP4 4 policy 27F and NP4 policy 9D, reuse of vacant buildings under material consideration. Policy 14, quality and design under B, and adaptability and local living. Totally agree with other councillor, local member, that there's no reason why this plan shouldn't go through. It would regenerate the area, get some more people into the town local living. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durno. We move to maybe Councillor Dorn. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with what previously have just been said. I also think we obviously need housing, and this seems like a relevant change of use in the property to develop it for housing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Fairweather?
Right, thanks, convener. I'm going to go a different way on this one. The fact that there's a public house not far away, it's takeaway. I think that just opens up huge problems, perhaps mostly for for the takeaway, not just the odours that the flat may get. Yeah, there's other empty shops there, but what we're going to do, turn them all into housing? No, I think the officers have got this absolutely right. This is, yeah, we do need housing, but this is the wrong place. So no, I'll stick with the officers on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. And Councillor Brace?
Yes, thanks, convener. I am very familiar with this this location and this shop. I'm also very familiar with the situation regarding retail in Brechin. And it comes to me that, well, yes, we do have a delineated and defined town centre, apparently, but we do know that there is an ever-diminishing demand for retail premises in Brechin, as in many other towns. Now, if we were tasked with deciding where we want the retail places to be and where we want residential to be, well, that would be a very difficult thing for me to pin down. But what we have here is, as Councillor Nicholl said, Market Street is not a main street. It's never been a main shopping street. It's never been full of shops. There have been a few nearer the corner. This particular one is not on the corner, the frontage. It's in Market Street. I'm absolutely clear in my mind that this should be allowed to be developed into flats, because I see no prospect of it ever surviving as a shop. If we don't give this, it'll sit empty and it'll get older and uglier and it'll drive the town down. So I'm strongly in favour of granting permission to this, and also on the grounds that we don't have a dramatic shortage of available premises for retail in Brechin, but we do know that there is a housing crisis, and so I think that's very important. Also, you know, when it comes to our local plan, it is 7 years out of date, and well, it's out of date, and we all know that the whole retail scene has changed dramatically over even recent years. So I'm going to just use NPF 4 Policy 9 as my justification for granting this application.
Thanks, Councillor Brace. And Ms Mackay, I see your hand is up. So do you want to interject at this point?
Aye. Yeah, it's just to clarify that town centre policy and national planning framework actually supports the reuse of vacant buildings within town centres where it can be demonstrated that the existing use is no longer viable, and the proposed change of use adds to the viability and vitality to the area. However, that's on the premise that any mitigating impacts can be sufficiently addressed. I wonder if it may be worthwhile. I know that we have someone from environmental health on the call to take their view in regards to this about any of the mitigation methods that have been recommended as part of the proposal.
Yes, I'm conscious that we had a fairly strong objection from Environmental Health. Is that Louise Manson is the rep from Environmental Health? Yeah, happy to hear your take on it at this point in time.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, Environmental Health did object to this proposal with concerns around the amenity of the housing proposed. There would be deemed to be a significant impact on the amenity of this proposed residential property due to the proximity of the hot food takeaway, and it may lead to potential complaints against the hot food takeaway from the future occupants of the property. And that ties back to the agent of change principle. There shouldn't be an added burden on existing businesses from proposed development, and unfortunately there is no mitigation that could be applied to this residential property to protect it from patrons of the nearby hot food takeaway or other businesses. I can appreciate the want and desire for additional residential dwellings. However, if we looked at this in reverse, there is a planning advice note that does not permit hot food takeaways to abut an existing residential property. And it's on that basis, almost in reverse, that we need to take the advice that if we couldn't have hot food takeaway come to adjoin residential property, particularly with a party wall here, then it really is not appropriate to support residential property adjoining a hot food takeaway that has been in existence for so long, in that there are no mitigations or conditions around the operation of that business in its current location.
Okay,
thank
you for that. Thanks for that description. Any questions for Ms Manson from members? I'm not seeing any. Okay, thanks very much for your contribution. I guess I haven't expressed my view. Sorry, Councillor Durno, I've missed your hand. Apologies.
Yeah, just a quick question to Ms Manson. In my locality, we have Airbnbs that are on top of restaurants, chip shops in my area. Does that come under different legislation from properties that are actually people staying in full time?
It's not legislation, and we're referring here to a planning advice note where the hot food takeaway is currently existing and residential coming to that. So in terms of agent of change, that would apply to all development, that anyone moving to and effectively a polluting source, whether it be noise or odour, has the responsibility to protect that property so as not to put any undue demand or potential complaint onto the existing business. The existing business should not be penalised for any development that comes thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thanks for clarifying that. Yep, so I haven't given you my view, and I would have to say on this one, I took the comments from Environmental Health, which were in the papers, seriously. and I am siding with Councillor Fairweather on this one. So just so that we do this formally, I'll move that we reject the appeal because of the environmental health issues. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. And is there an amendment? Councillor Nicholl wants to put up forward an amendment. Seconded by Councillor Brays. And I guess your reasons for rejecting the officer's original decision is the MPF4 policy that you referred to, which was 9 and 15, which allows the reuse of... OK, so I think if we can just move to the vote, Mrs Forsyth. OK, Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks. I fully take on board what environmental have heard, and thanks for that, Louise Manson. But I fear that the alternative will result in rats and dereliction, and I think that's probably a worse outcome for the town of Brechin.
Yeah, I agree. This is like many of those ones, not that easy a one, but I can see we do get into trouble when we have a mixture of housing and hot food takeaways. It can be a mixture that doesn't always go too well. Anyway, if we can ask Mrs Forsyth just to go to the vote.
Sure, Convener. The motion by yourself, seconded by Councillor Fairweather, is to dismiss the appeal for the reasons as outlined in the handling report. The amendment by Councillor Nicholl, seconded by Councillor Brays, is to uphold the appeal and grant planning permission as the reuse of the property complies with policies 9 and 15 of NPF 4. Please vote motion or amendment. Convener.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl.
Amendment.
Sorry, my mic keeps going off. Sorry, Councillor Brays. Councillor Doran.
I'm going to vote amendment.
Councillor Durno.
Amendment.
Councillor Fairweather.
Motion.
The amendment is carried by 4 votes to 2, Convener. The appeal is upheld and planning permission granted. That will be subject to conditions that I think we might have today, Katie.
Did you have conditions available, Ms Mackay?
I do. I have some conditions. Give me a second.
Thanks very much. Thank you. I think you're muted, Ms Mackay. We're not hearing you.
Oh, sorry. Can you confirm you can see that okay? The following planning conditions may be attached to regulate, clarify matters associated with the development. The development to which this permission relates must begin not later than expiration of 3 years from the date of its grant. The reason is in order to clarify the duration of the permission in accordance with the requirements of the Town and Country Planning Act 1997 as amended to ensure that it will lapse if not implemented within this period. Number 2, for the avoidance of doubt, the West Street elevation shown in drawing 010122 SK2B is not approved, and the windows, door and external finishes shall be implemented in accordance with drawing entitled Door and Window dated June 2023. And the reason is for clarity on the approved door and window design and external finishes.
Are there any further conditions?
That's all the conditions that the planning officer prepared for this particular application.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. So just to clarify, planning application 23/00199/full, the appeal is upheld, subject to the two conditions that we've just seen on the screen.
Councillor Fairweather.
Councillor Fairweather, sorry.
Yeah, convener, trying to remove those conditions are enough. Permission has just been granted for something that is going to be detrimental to an existing business, and I do believe there should be a condition, right, to try and safeguard that particular business, because I think we will have problems in the future, regarding complaints, perhaps regarding odour. Is there something we can do with that, right, Katie? Is there anything we can do?
As part of the preparation for Dmrc, I do ask the case officer to prepare conditions in relation to this. The second condition that's been applied is in relation to a corresponding application for listed building consent, just to address the two of them weren't completely in alignment, and that's in regards to that. But the case officer considered this application and the corresponding application, and in their opinion, this is the only conditions that can be applied.
I mean, this is it's a tricky one, because if the applicant was a hot food venue, then we could apply conditions to them. But this is a domestic house, and it's very difficult to. I'm sure the trouble is, what condition could we apply? That I would be struggling there. I think, is that something that the planning can think about, or is there just frankly nothing we can do here?
If members were minded, we could ask planning to look at this again to see if there's any other conditions that they feel would be applicable. But as said, they do look at the application and do try to address anything that may come up in this particular instance. And like yourself, if it was a hot food takeaway, restricting hours and anything that environmental health had actually advised would help mitigate would be easy, but the other way around is not straightforward.
Okay, thanks for that. I think to satisfy the concerns of Councillor Fairweather, can we agree to planning permission subject to conditions which are brought back at a future meeting, and that would give planning a chance to review the situation, and if they can come up with a suitable set of conditions, then that would be fine. But I think that's the best situation, given that we don't have anything else prepared. Are you happy with that, Councillor Fairweather?
Yes, I'll accept that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, convener, could I just clarify that we are minded to grant, subject to those conditions coming forward for consideration by members, rather than granting planning permission now that we are deferring consideration of those conditions in front of us?
Okay, well, we use that form of words. We're minded to approve it subject to the conditions coming forward to a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for that. We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5, land at Balbuchley House, Balbuchley, apologies for the pronunciation, Kirkton of Ochterhouse, and that's back with you, Ms Mackay.
Sorry, my IT seems to be running really, really slowly today.
Right, we're seeing the first slide again, and on your slide pack, just go ahead when you're ready.
Is that okay now? Can you see them in full screen now?
That's perfect, thank you.
Brilliant. Good afternoon, I am Katie Mackay of the Development Plan Team at Angus Council, present today as Independent Planning Advisor to the committee. I can confirm I undertook an initial site visit on the 14th of September 2023. I have had no previous involvement in the application, and I have had no conflict of interest relative to the case, the applicant or any interested party. The committee is asked to consider an application for a review of conditions, the removal of condition 2 and 4 for the erection of staff accommodation for seasonal workers and associated works. Members should be aware that planning permission has been granted for this application, and the review relates to 2 of the conditions attached to planning permission only. Nevertheless, to provide context, I will provide an overview of the application. The proposal is within the area outlined in red, shown on the map, located to the south of the C6, Kirkton of Auchterhouse to Teeling Road. Planning permission has been granted for the erection of 2 seasonal worker units for forestry employees on a site measuring around 1,500 square metres. The units will be located around 21 metres to the south of the public road, with access to the site available from the northeastern corner and on the eastern boundary. This slide shows the flat roofed units will have a footprint of 30 metres square and 60 metres square, with an overall height of 2.88 metres. The external finishes comprise of vertical timber lined walls and metal profiled sheet roofs. The accommodation in the smaller unit comprises of an open plan kitchen, dining and living room, a bedroom and a shower room. The larger unit comprises of an open plan kitchen, dining and living room, 2 bedrooms, 2 shower rooms. Hardcore pathways and parking areas are to be provided within Landscaping Incorporated. Members should be aware that Environmental Health advised that these meet the legal definition of caravans, and as their use as accommodation for forestry workers, they are exempt from requiring a site licence. Just to go through some pictures, this is the current access from the northeast side of the site. This is site access from the east, and this would be the point that the access for the proposed development would go into the site. This is taken from on the site looking north. This is from the site looking south. Moving on to the conditions currently in place are condition 2, that the use development hereby permitted shall be restricted to a period of 5 years from the date of this permission. This is in order that the council can control and review the length of time during which the development is permitted to continue in the interests of the general amenity of the area in accordance with policy TC5 and the local development plan. The other condition is condition 4, that the accommodation hereby approved shall only be occupied on a temporary basis by seasonal workers employed by Nissan Christmas Trees Limited, Balbury, Auchterhouse, Dundee, and that none of the accommodation provided under the provision of the permission hereby granted shall be occupied within the periods the 1st of January to the 31st of January, inclusive in any year, as long as this permission endures. The reason is in order to ensure that the accommodation is provided for seasonal workers employed in association with the applicant's forestry business, and to ensure that the accommodation is used as temporary accommodation only for those workers. Members should note that in reference to condition 4, that page 2 to 3 of the letter provided by the agent, dated on the 8th of December, under the heading Seasonality of Operation, which demonstrated the number of employees that would use the proposed development in January would be 0. In reference to condition 2, page 6, as part of the letter submitted by the agent, they provided the policy context as seen in the local development plan, quoting, planning permission will not be normally granted for more than 5 years when the requirement for seasonal or transient workers accommodation can be reviewed. Temporary structures, including residential caravans, must be removed when the need for them ceases or the planning permission expires, whichever is sooner. On page 8 of the agent's letter, they further comment stating the proposal is fully demountable and can be removed if necessary as suggested by policy. This can be secured by condition. In addition, I have reviewed the planning applications the agent has referred to within their submission as comparable applications. They state that they do not have similar conditions attached, and I've found as follows. The first application referred to is 1800129 full. It was for the formation of staff accommodation, including office, changing area, storage facilities at Kearney Lodge and Arbroath. This application proposed the replacement of existing storage containers to instead provide shared welfare facilities only. No residential use was proposed under this application. Therefore, this application is not comparable with the application currently being considered, and it would not require any similar condition. The application also quoted by the agent, 2100352 full, for the erection of staff accommodation for seasonal workers, formation of hard standing areas, and associated works at Templeton, Christmas Tree Farm and Strathmartin. This application proposed a permanent structure to provide accommodation to include kitchen, showers, toilets and living areas. It's therefore not comparable as it proposes permanent accommodation. Moving back to the current application to highlight the case officer's view of the current application, the planner states on page 5 of the report of handling, as the application proposes temporary accommodation, it is appropriate to limit the duration of planning permission to a temporary 5-year period. Planning conditions are also attached to ensure that the accommodation is used by staff associated with the applicant's forestry operations only. So to conclude, the case officer's report, notice of review and grounds of appeal and other information are detailed in the papers in front of members. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms Mackay? Councillor Nicholl.
Right, thank you very much. This 5 years, I see the applicant basically has a 15-year cycle. Is there much problem in the end of the 5 years for them reapplying, or would that be up to the whims of who's ever in the planning at the time? Or that's what I was concerned about.
Each application is based on its own merits. However, 5 years, a condition that's been attached as a pretty standard condition for temporary structures such as this. Assuming all conditions were the same and the impact and the amenity, I couldn't foresee any particular issue. But as I said, that would be up to the case officer at the time when they're looking at the particular planning application.
Thank you. Councillor Doran.
Thanks. Regarding condition 2, the one that deals with no one being present in the property in January, are there any other temporary accommodation in Angus that we know of that are managed in a different way to that? Or are they all managed in that way that no one can be there in January?
I think it's condition 4 that said that
Sorry,
it had to be in January. But can you answer that question, Ms McCarthy?
Apologies, I done obviously a bit of research on the application that were actually submitted as part of the planning appeal statement. I did do a quick search on our planning systems on public access, and there's lots of applications of a similar nature, but unfortunately time constraints meant that I've not actually been able to go in and find out to what extent this would be in Angus. They are pretty standard conditions. I would expect to see this, but I wouldn't be able to comment on particular numbers without doing more research.
Thank you. I see that Ms Manson's got her hand up, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add, I don't know specific numbers, but this is a common condition when for caravan sites or temporary use for non-residential. So it's a recognition to ensure that this does not become full-time accommodation.
Okay, thanks. Understood. Any further questions for officers? Councillor Nicholl, on you go.
Again, sorry. This is from Ms Manson. We've got in from the 1st of January to the 31st of January. Could that may be a time of the year when this business is needing workers? Could it be agreed another month of the year, June month or something?
I believe this is based on the supporting statement provided by the applicant that there were no workers required in the month of January, but I'll defer to planning to confirm.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, to confirm, as part of the original statement submitted as part of the planning application, the information the agent presented to us set out that there would be 0 people staying in the accommodation during the months of May, that there would likely be varying levels throughout the year, but within the month of January there wouldn't be anyone living in the accommodation.
Okay, thank you. No further questions then? Can we? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dorn.
Thanks. Mine's more of a clarification one. So on this, obviously, there's 2 conditions that we're discussing. Do we have to agree both of them, or none of them, or one of them? Like, what is the state of how we do that?
Well, I think we're going to we'll go around the table in the usual fashion and ask members what their views are on the 2 conditions. I think that was my intended process here. So I'm just checking that we've got all the questions answered that we need, and I'll ask you if you can now have you got enough information now to proceed to determine the application or to determine the conditions. I'm seeing noddings of heads. So okay, as you're the local member here, Councillor Dorn, do you want to start with your views? And if we can take the conditions one at a time, just so that we're absolutely clear, and we'll go around the table in the usual fashion.
Okay, thank you. So we're talking about, we get them right the right way around, the condition 2 first, which is relating to the 5-year review. I agree. I think that one should stay in, because I think that otherwise it is permanent accommodation if it's not being reviewed, and so I think that one should stay. I agree with that. Regarding condition 4, if there is an alternative month that could be identified as being not no people being present in the accommodation during that time, I would agree with that, because it would fulfill it not being permanent. The alternative is that if that's not correct and the accommodation needs to be someone in it all the time, then I would argue that would make it then permanent accommodation because it's always in use. So that would be my view. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Doran. Move to maybe Councillor Brays. Do you want to give us your thoughts on this one?
Well, I actually think that conditions 2 and 4 are appropriate. I don't really see a problem with this. 5 years, it might not be a full cycle of tree growth, but come back and get that extended after 5 years. And okay, it's a bit of paperwork, etc., but they can reapply for planning permission again. And when it comes to 4, where we're talking about the when it comes to the month that they're not allowed to occupy, well, they've said they don't need workers in that month. And if my understanding is correct, if they decide in the future that actually they do need to occupy it in the month of January, well, they could come back and apply for that and give up another month when they might be allowed to occupy. It's not, this doesn't force them away forever and ever. They can come back at pretty much any time and apply for something different if they feel the need for it. Thanks.
Okay, so you're basically for sticking with the 2 conditions that are there at the moment. Councillor Fairweather, do you want to give us your views on this one?
Yeah, right, thanks, convener. I really don't have too much issue with condition 2. Yeah, it's right. I'm saying that after 5 years, I can understand that that's going to cost the money to reapply. So if we could have made it 10 years, I would have been I would have been happier with that. Regarding number 4, I've always had concerns about this temporary and permanent, and this one month when it can't be used. And if I read it rightly, the applicant had put in the submission that they could be looking to put temporary workers in at that time. At the end of the day, I think we should be looking after our local businesses and giving them every help they can. So be minded to remove that condition. That's my thoughts.
Thanks, Councillor Fairweather. And Councillor Durno?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think the 5 year is sufficient time. We don't know in 5 years' time, maybe Christmas trees might go out of fashion, they might want to grow and the season might change. So I'm quite happy with that. And the number 4 with what month, I think the applicant will know which month he wants workers there, and if he's stipulated and we're okay with that, then I'm quite happy with what we've got at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durno. And that leaves Councillor Nicholl. Give us your views.
Thank you very much, convener. With item 2, with it being a temporary accommodation every 5 years, I'm like Councillor Fairweather. I think it should be a bit more extended, but it does say it's 5 years, and that it would be 5 years thereafter, and then 5 years thereafter, and should be no problem. And unlike Councillor Fairweather, I see no reason having condition 4 on it, because if it's temporary accommodation for the 5 years, it's not a permanent residence, and there may be times that they require occupancy of it, regardless of which time of the year it is. So I would reluctantly stick with item 2, and I would not put forward item 4.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholl. I see Ms Manson's got her hand up again. On you go, Ms Manson.
Thank you, Convener. Just a point for consideration that if the structures classed as caravans were to be occupied all year round, they would no longer be exempt from a caravan site licence. So there would be consequences for the business in terms of caravan site licensing.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. That's a useful point. Thanks for clarifying that. That's a useful point. I think one of the suggestions, I think, from the applicant's agent was that there would be two ways of dealing with this. Either you have the blank month in January, or they ensure that no individual resident would stay there for more than 11 months. The argument, I think, from the applicant is they want flexibility, although when they did the submission, they said they didn't have anybody working there in January. The recruiting labour for this type of business is quite difficult, and if they found some labour, they would want to use them in January. That was their argument for a more flexible approach. But if they insisted that there was no way you could live here, that would be another way of perhaps dealing with that issue. I mean, would that be difficult from a practical point of view? Is that the issue there, Ms Manson? That it's clearer to have a blank month than to have to track individual employees and ensure compliance? Would that be the issue?
Yes, certainly for the planning condition to be enforceable, it would have to be a clear time period. In relation to therefore no longer being exempt from caravan site licensing, that's a separate matter that would come with its own set of conditions subject to the applicant securing a caravan site licence for that to effectively be used as residential accommodation all year round. So it makes that shift from temporary accommodation to residential accommodation. Now, you may recall that Angus opted to remove the exemption for agricultural workers from being exempt from caravan site licensing following a fatality. So that there are other considerations out with the planning forum based on whatever decision is made today.
Thanks for clarifying that, Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, can we confirm that, right? What would be the cost of a caravan licence? Because that certainly might be off-putting.
I don't know whether that's relevant at this point. If someone knows the answer, fine, but I'm not sure it's relevant.
Just of interest.
Okay, I guess we're going to have to try and tease this out. So I'll give you my views first, and then we can see where we stack up in terms of what we're thinking. In terms of condition 2, my view was that they've got it's quite a long established business. They've been going for 20 years. They've got whatever it is, 2 million trees under cultivation, and they've got a 15-year growing cycle. So, and I perhaps disagree with Councillor Durno. I think there'll be a market for Christmas trees as far as we can see, in my opinion. You never know, but I think so. So it kind of looks like it's a long-term business. And I can see the applicant's concern about a 5-year. Their argument is they want to put in good quality accommodation for the staff to help them to attract staff. And if they've got to then apply every 5 years and risk losing the right to have this accommodation, then I can see the business conundrum for them. So I tend to agree. I would agree with the applicant that the 5 years is over onerous, and it's a bit illogical if it's a long-term business. So I would be minded to strike down that condition. In terms of condition 4, I think it's useful to tease out this issue about the 12-month issue, because if they have to apply for a caravan site licence, that might not be attractive to them. And I think their suggestion about doing it by worker would be probably quite difficult for the council to enforce, and the clear month I know that there's certainly, I can think of a site I know which the council runs, and it has the same policy of a clear month when no one is allowed to stay there to prevent the 12 months residency, and that is at least more easy to enforce. So I think my view would be to accept, I would reject condition 2, but would maintain condition 4. So I think if we can just do that the same way as the previous one, we'll discuss condition 2 first, and my proposal is to strike down, my motion, if you like, is to strike down condition 2. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Nicholl is seconding that. Is there an amendment? Can I just check, is there an amendment coming from someone or not? Okay, lots of shaking of heads. Okay, that slightly surprised me from the notes I'd taken, but so are we happy to strike down condition 2? Yes. Okay, we're happy to strike down condition 2. Do you need reasons for that, Mrs. Forsyth, or if we simply say that it's illogical and it's not helping a business with its business plan, is that a sufficient reason?
No conditions required, convener. We've simply upheld the appeal in relation to the removal of condition 2.
Okay, that's fine. So we're comfortable to strike down condition 2. We move on to condition 4, and I guess I would be moving, from what we've heard from Ms Manson in environmental health and the complications of going to a 12-month situation, I think we should retain condition 4. If the applicant doesn't like that, they have got an option, which is to go for a 12-month, but they will have to go for a licence. So that kind of puts the ball back in their court, that they'll have to apply for a caravan site licence if they want a 12-month situation. Because I think trying to track it by individual person would be pretty complex for the council, and I just don't think I don't think enforcement would be very easy to do. So I would say from that argument I would propose that we retain condition 4. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Brace is seconding. Is there an amendment? Okay, I'm seeing lots of shaking of heads. So there's not an amendment. So just to clarify then, the planning application 22/00787/full, we have agreed to remove condition 2 but maintain condition 4. Is everyone comfortable with that decision? Okay, thanks very much indeed. So we'll now move on to item 6, which is Carlungi Farm, Carlungi, Carnoustie, and back over to you, Ms Mackay.
I am just setting this up just now. Can everyone see that okay? Brilliant, thank you. Good afternoon, I am Katie Mackay, the Development Plan Team at Angus Council, present today as Independent Planning Advisor to the committee. I confirm I undertook an initial site visit on the 14th of September 2023. I have no conflict of interest relative to the case, applicant, or any interested party. The committee is asked to consider an application for a review to amend condition 3 attached to an application for the demo of redundant farm buildings in the erection of 4 dwelling houses. Members should be aware that this planning permission in principle has been granted for this application, and the review relates to one of the conditions attached to the permission only. To provide context, I will provide an overview of the application. The site is located to the north of the A92 Dundee to Arbroath Road, with access taken from the unclassified Old Downey Road. The application site sits just below the writing where it says Curlungy Earth House. The proposal is within the area outlined in red shown on the map. Agricultural land bounds the site to the north and the west, with agricultural buildings and the residential property to the east. The application site measures approximately 7,518 square metres and currently contains a number of derelict traditional steading agricultural buildings, some modern agricultural buildings and associated hard standing areas. An indicative layout shows 4 dwelling houses being accommodated on the site, with plots ranging from 1,440 square metres and 1,756 square metres. Just to bring members' attention to page 2 of the report of handling, where Historic Environment Scotland provided a response. They offered no objection but noted the potential impact of the setting on the scheduled monument located roughly 70 metres to the northeast of the site. It should be considered and advised the council that they should control the scale and massing of the buildings and boundary treatments, and screening should be provided on the boundary to partly mitigate any impacts.
Can I just ask you, on the previous map, is the monument, that's the square block just above the farmsteading development, is that right? The square building, is it?
No, it's actually to the northwest.
Okay, so sorry, I just assumed that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, so I took a few photographs out on site just to give you some context. So this picture is taken from Downey Road. It's looking south. A little bit closer up, this would be the area with the proposed site access. It shows some of the existing steadings and agricultural buildings. This picture is taken looking north. And again, it shows you some of the existing buildings that are on site. And moving on to the current condition, the plans and particulars of matters listed below shall be submitted for consideration by the planning authority. No work shall begin until the written approval of the authority has been given, and the development shall be carried out in accordance with the approval. The matters are the siting of the buildings, the design and external appearance of the buildings, the layout of the site including access, car parking and turning space. The means of vehicular access to the site shall be a way of suitable access to be formed and constructed onto Old Downey Road in accordance with the standards of Angus Council, and the car parking within each plot curtilage shall be in accordance with National Roads Development Guide. A scheme of hard and soft landscaping, including the means of site enclosure. For the avoidance of doubt, the submitted scheme shall include details of protection measures for existing trees within and adjacent to the site during construction works. All landscaping shall be carried out in accordance with the approved scheme and shall be completed during the planting season, immediately following the commencement of development, or such other date as may be agreed in writing by the planning authority, but shall be no later than within 12 months of the occupation of the dwelling hereby approved. Any planting which, in the opinion of the planning authority, within a period of 5 years from the completion of the development is dying, being severely damaged or becoming seriously diseased, shall be replaced by plants of similar size and species to those originally required to be planted. Precise details of the means of drainage for the development. For the avoidance of doubt, surface water shall be directed to a sustainable drainage system. The existing and proposed ground levels and finished floor levels relative to a fixed ordnance datum and ground and floor levels of neighbouring properties. The applicant has requested that condition 3 is amended. It relates to the introductory text only. So just to highlight what they would like to be inserted, they would like it to instead read no work other than investigative demolition or site clearance work shall begin until the written approval of the authority has been given and the development shall be carried out in accordance with that approval. Previously, Development Standards advised the applicant that in their view, having reviewed the legislation, that they were unable to make the changes suggested as a condition is required to regulate the development until certain matters are approved, and therefore there would be no statutory position to allow this to be amended or removed. This response was in relation to a request of a non-material variation, and in present circumstances forms the basis of this appeal. I would there recommend that members consult Development Standards to provide a view based on the current conditions. Can the legal advisor confirm that they're in agreement with this view?
Mr. Syme?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yeah, I would be in agreement with that. As the planning colleague has advised, this may need to go back to Development Standards.
So is what we're saying is we're agreeing to amend the conditions here. Is that what we're saying, Ms Mackay?
No, to clarify, previous conversations have occurred between the case officer and the applicant. The applicant had previously asked planning to amend the condition. The means of doing so they had requested was through a non-material variation. That was not able to happen, and therefore the applicant has appealed this condition and are asking us at this stage if we can amend this condition to insert additional wording. My thoughts in this matter are this is a standard condition that's applied to planning applications of this nature, and deviation from it is highly unusual. I would therefore recommend that members request that Planning Development Standards provide a detailed response in regards to this and provide a view if their view remains the same as it was with the non-material variation, that they are unable to do it because it applies to particular regulations.
I see. Okay. Councillor Braze, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, I'm just seeking clarity here. Is your recommendation that this matter goes back to the full Development Standards Committee to decide whether we're going for the amended condition or sticking with the original condition placed in it by Development Standards?
Well, it was approved under delegated powers.
Yes.
Obviously, I mean there was an email request from the applicant to planning to amend condition 3, which, according to the applicant, there was no response from Development Standards. So that's why they've submitted the appeal. Are we suggesting that we bounce this back to Development Standards officers? Is that what we're suggesting?
My understanding is that a response was received by the applicant, but in this particular instance, I would suggest that Development Standards should provide their view on whether or not any amendment would meet regulations.
So what regulation, I mean, as I understand the applicant's case, what they're saying is they want to effectively demolish the site, these old buildings, demolish them before they look for a developer to build the houses. And they're thinking that's a more pragmatic way of going forward. But they can't demolish them until we get the plans for the new development. And they're saying, well, that depends on who the the builder is who's going to build them. They're presumably going to offload this to a builder to actually develop. So that what they want to do is to demolish the building. It's in fairly poor condition, and obviously we've provided conditions that it can only be done in the right season for birds and bats and so forth. So there's a sort of timing issue there for them to move things forward, and I can see the argument. So what is the reason why we need to have the full design ready just to allow them to demolish the old building, which I think they've provided copious evidence that the old building is redundant and is not fit for purpose. It's going to come down. It's just a question of when is it brought down, and I think their argument is they would like that ability to investigate and take the building down before they provide full details of the new build situation. What regulations prevent that happening?
The standard wording that's been used at the beginning of it is the bit that causes the issue. It's not the particular detail that's underneath. The standard wording at the beginning, under Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 as amended, so subject to a condition imposed under section 37(1)A that the development in question shall not begin until certain matters which need not be particularised in the application. It's to do with that particular wording, will not begin. It's the introductory part that may be against the regulations, hence the reason I'm suggesting that development standard provide a response in regards to that as they're applying the regulations when they are writing the conditions in the first instance.
So just to clarify, the planning application we're looking at 220463/PPPL, this is an outline planning application, that's right? Okay. That's right. So it's not a detailed planning application. So yes. Your advice is that we refer this back to development standards officers to provide a response to the request from the applicant.
Yes, that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. So we've had some advice there from our planning advisor. What's the view of elected members? Councillor Bray.
Well, I find this really quite frustrating because if the applicant had simply applied for permission to demolish an unsafe derelict steading, it would have been granted because there would be absolutely no reason not to grant it. But here they find themselves, because of, well, basically market conditions and all sorts of other things, it might be very difficult to get anyone to take this on. And I just find it frustrating that they're going to have to go through a whole lot of rigmarole to get this done. You know, if they applied for planning permission to demolish it, they would have a clear brownfield site. And then a developer could come forward with their plan for planning permission.
I guess we're in the old problem that we've got to look at the application in front of us, not the one that they might have been best advised to have brought forward. I don't know. Excuse me. I'm minded to take Ms Mackay's advice here and refer this back to development standards officers. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you, Convener. The farmstead at Curlungy is a mixture of redundant and not fit for modern agricultural buildings. There is no significant salvage or reuse value in the buildings. If nothing is done with the buildings, they will sit there as an ugly blot on the landscape, and I see no harm in altering the words that the applicant has put forward so they can enable them to demolish the property. They're still complying with all the regulations with BATs, etc. And I would be in favour of altering the wording.
Convener, I just wanted to come in. Councillor Nicholl has obviously given us his thoughts in terms of the application for review. I think we need to go back a stage and just determine whether we do have enough information based on Ms Mackay's advice, whether you would want to take that advice, or whether members determine that they do have enough information today and don't require any further information from our Development Standards colleagues.
Yeah, so Mrs Forsyth's advising us that we haven't yet determined whether we've got enough information. I guess we've had advice from Ms Mackay as one way forward. Councillor Nicholl has articulated another way forward. I've got Councillor Fairweather and Councillor Dornan with hands up. So are either of you wanting further information from anyone, or do you feel that we can now make a decision, whatever that decision might be?
Chair, I must admit that I totally agree with Councillor Nicholl, but I think it would be perhaps foolish of us not to take the advice of our planning colleague, Katie Mackay. So I would be tending to say, let's get further information. But on saying that, I also do tend to agree with Councillor Nicholl.
Thanks, Councillor Dornan.
Yeah, I think we on this we have to take further and get further information on it as advised, even though this is a little bit frustrating.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I think I'm inclined to take Ms Mackay's advice here and refer this back to Development Standards. Councillor Durno?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chair, because I feel like, as Councillor Bray said, if this has come through as a demolition order, it would have been a lot simpler, and we can't actually amend words for individuals, because this could go on for other cases. You know, we can't keep changing things all the time. So I do think it should come back to Development Standards, and then they can take it from there. I don't think the applicant's in any particular hurry. As I said, he hasn't got a builder on site waiting to build this at the moment. So I think that's what we should do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Durno. So, yeah, I'm going to suggest that we take Ms Mackay's advice and we refer this back to Development Standards officers. And I mean, clearly, if the applicant in the interim decides to put in a separate planning application, we can't prevent that happening, and that might be a faster way forward. But that's a matter for them. So, are we happy with that decision?
Agreed.
Sorry, Convener, can I just wanted to come in to clarify. I understand that you're saying referring this back to Development Standards officers. I think what Ms Mackay is saying, that we would advise you to request further information in terms of a written procedure notice. So just to clarify that element of it, that it would be further information from our officers by way of a written procedure notice. And again, that would be up to members to determine how long Development Standards would have to reply to that, and then we have the 14-day period after that for the applicant to respond to that also.
Okay, yes. So, I mean, I guess, what do we feel in recent ones, we've given them how long? Usually a month, is it?
28 days.
28 days. So the suggestion is we ask Development Standards, we'll give them 28 days to respond to our request for a written notice, and then we would give the applicant 14 days to respond to that, in the same way that we dealt with the MPF4 implications a few months back. So are we happy to do that? Councillor Brays?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm happy to do it, but I think it's the only thing we can do.
Yes, I'd have to say I agree with you, Councillor Brays. I'm not that happy, but it seems like the sensible way forward. So I think if we're all agreed to that, we will take that decision. Okay, I think that is us now finished today. Thanks for your attendance, and I wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
John, could you stop the live stream?